Namaste, folks. Let's start as always, just observing. Where are you right now? What are the sensations through the body? If you're in a chair, you're just sitting, whatever way is comfortable to start with. I would invite y'all to stand and sit the way you normally stand and sit for a bit. And just notice what that feels like. So if your normal standing posture or sitting posture has nothing to do with efficient alignment, give into it for a moment. Just notice what it's like to stand and breathe the way you usually stand and breathe. And then come to a posture that you know is aligned. So remember, standing, feet are lined up under hip bones in front, or one heel under each butt cheek and back. More weight on the heels and the outside edges of the feet, which are parallel. And then we're stacking up bones, erector set, tinker toys. Same thing when we're sitting, but we're even on two sits bones. Legs can be neutral in front of you if that applies. It's helpful to think of the torso in this, at this point, in terms of two blocks. So you've got your rib cage block and you've got your hip block. And remember, we did a little bit of work to make sure that the rib cage block was not tipped backwards. You want to stack the ribs right on top of the hips. And we'd like to get the head up on top. Remember, that can take a little bit of work in the shoulders and neck. So if you need to fidget a bit, arms will hang off the back. If you're sitting, let the weight of the hands be supported by your lap or by the armrests. What are the sensations now? What differs? And then take a couple of full breaths. So that means you're going to let your rib cage spread sideways as you inhale and a little bit backwards. You can use your hands for feedback. You're going to let everything release as much as possible back into the center line as you exhale. If your shoulders are going up and down, that's unnecessary movement. How's the timing with the breath? Is it even as you inhale and exhale? If it's not, let it be. You can invite even timing, but we don't want to force anything to happen here. And let's start moving by moving the shoulders. So we're just going to roll one and then the other. If you would prefer to roll forward first, have at it. Start rolling the shoulders enough so that you start taking the ribs, maybe the hips, and maybe the knees. So we're finding a twist from rolling the shoulders. And then you can let the body collapse on the side that you're rolling down toward, right? So we have minimal twist, a little bit of side bend. We're just letting the spine give in a bunch of different directions, and then find your way back to stacked back up and go in the opposite direction with your shoulder rolls. So start with the circles, bring the ribs in, maybe the hips, thighs. And then again, let yourself collapse in the direction that you are rolling, right? I'm down on that side, now I'm down on this side. And then bring yourself back to the center. Notice sensations again, notice your breath. And let's go with the hands. So I'm moving closely here. Start with an interlace and then change the interlace all the way down. You can do this all at once if you prefer. So the other thumb is on top. And just notice what that feels like. And if it's exceedingly strange, welcome to the other side of your body. Then try going back and forth, just lacing one way and then the other. If you can get to the point where you can do it really rapidly, this is great for the brain. If you have to stay slowly, better than not doing it. If you have to lace one finger and then the other and then the other while you look at them, absolutely fine. Start where you are. And if you're holding your breath, try breathing again. So let your hands come to rest wherever they land, and then press down a little bit on the finger webs. Press and play there, both sides. All the finger webs you can get in between the thumb and the forefinger as well. And then explore between the long bones on the back of your hands. If there is no space, don't try to make it happen. If there's something tender there, don't press. And then at the base of the hand, notice that you've got these two mounds of muscle here. And you want to spread one mound out toward the small fingers and then the other mound out toward the thumb, and do that on both hands. So I use the heel of my hand to do this because my fingers tend to bend backwards. So if you are spreading with your thumb and your thumb is going into hyperextension, don't do that. Find another part of the hand that's more stable to press with. So we're smoothing out those muscles that have a lot to do with our grip. And then go for the joints where your fingers meet the palm. Now, some of us have very square palms and we can just get all of the joints done in one place. You'll notice that my hands are not built that way. So I'm going to adjust a little bit to get toward the smaller fingers. And if your palms are not square, do the same, adjust back and forth. Then change the interlace of the hands. Do all of that again. So finger webs, backs of the hands in between the bones, the base of the palm, spreading muscle. Think of gentle, right? You're spreading cookie dough, pie dough, something that could push apart. You are not trying to rearrange the muscle on your hand. You're just spreading and smoothing it out. And then go for the finger joints again, up the top of the palm, all of them. None of this, again, I will say it again, none of this should hurt. Then stay where you are and see what happens if you extend the elbows. We still want the finger joints to be coming further forward than the wrists. Maybe you can get the elbows to squeeze together, maybe not. Let the arms go for a moment. If you need to play with the shoulders because it's been difficult up there, go for it. You may want to do a little bit of self-massage at the joint. Gentle circles at joints is usually a safe direction to go. Then go back again. We're going to interlace with the right thumb on top. And you're going to extend those hands all the way out. Feel where your shoulder blades are on your back. Come back in, change the interlace. Now the left thumb is on top. Extend the finger joints all the way out. Extend the elbows. Feel where your shoulder blades are. Good. Let your arms go. Let's go to a wider than shoulder distance stance. This does not have to be very wide. We just want to get the inner thighs loosened up a little bit. So you're just shifting, you're rocking your hips from side to side. If you are sitting on a chair, it can be useful to sit toward the edge so that you have some width available to you. And then you're going to shift by rocking onto one sits bone and then the other. You can also extend your legs. Now, if you have no arms on your chair, you can play with how wide will those legs go. We just want to get loosened up in those inner hips. And then bring the legs back underneath you, either stepping and landing or springing back in. Observe again. And then we're going to work as close to a wall as we can get. So if you have liked working against a corner that sticks out into the room, you can absolutely do that. What we're doing at the corner instead of at the wall. I am going to create a little bit of spacers for myself in two places. So if we look at my lining up shoulders, hips, ankles, I have a butt that sticks out. I don't have a flat back and I don't want a flat back. I want a healthy spine. So in order to space at the wall, I just have to fold up Towels, you may need more or less. So you may want to use blankets, blocks, whatever you've got available. The positioning is going to be just below your shoulder blades so that we've got that lower to mid rib being able to be in contact with something. The other spacer is going to go at the base of the skull. So we want base of skull and mid ribs. In order to get back against the wall, same as we did when we were standing against a corner, you just back up and back up and back up, wait on your heels until your butt touches, there you are. And then spacer, one below the shoulder blades, one at the base of the skull. Oh, get used to standing there. Again, we want weight on the heels, which are spaced hip joint distance apart. Weight also on the outside of the feet. Feel that stance. It may be much more upright than you are used to. It can be a shock when you think you've been standing erect and you get to a wall or that corner sticking out into the room and you discover, oh, I'm not even close to erect. So interlace your hands with your right thumb on top. We're going to extend all the way out. Push your feet into the floor, outside edges and heels. Also big toe joint. Take the arms up as you inhale. Did the spacers move? Keep those spacers in place. Bring the arms back down. Keep the elbows extended. So for some of us, this is as far as we are going, right? Now, if you're in a chair that's able to get you up against the wall and flat against the wall, sure, go for it. If you have a chair with a back, yes, you can use spacers. Most chair backs slope backwards, so it's not so useful. It's difficult to find feedback. If you have a bench that you can sit on so that you can use a wall, that's one way to use a sitting surface. So we're hanging out here, pressing our feet into the floor, our hands up toward the ceiling. And can you tell, aside from what's going on with those spacers, which we don't want to lose, can you tell whether you can get your fingers back toward the wall? Maybe, maybe not. Remember, if it's right over our shoulders and we've got spacers, our fingers right above our head will not touch the wall. Are your elbows straight? Can you extend them further? Good, let everything come down. Give yourself a break from being at the wall. We're going to go back there again to do it with the other hand laced. So those of you who are saying, well, hey, wait, I happen to be very flat in the back. Yay for that shape. I hope you're enjoying living in it. Don't use spacers if you can back right up. Of course, if you're at the corner that's sticking out, you don't need a spacer because we use that corner to bypass any of the curves that we've got going on. Those of you who have a kyphosis in the rib cage, that rounding forward, the answer is not to crane your neck, right? So you may not need a spacer at the ribs because your ribs have rounded far enough to get back to where your butt curve is. And we may not be able to use a spacer at the neck that would be commensurate to the space you would expect. We want that back of the neck to be long as the base of the skull touches that spacer. So with all of that, put yourself back against the wall. So you back up with your heels until your butt just lightly touches. Find the spacer just below your shoulder blades. Long neck, just at the base of the skull. This time we're interlacing left thumb on top. Extend the fingers out. Elbows extended, squeeze them a little bit together. Big inhalation, press down with the feet, up with the hands. We're going to let it go on the exhalation, and then we're going to go back up there. So as we push down and push up at the same time, with those spacers in place, we've got a traction straight up and down the spine. So if your arms are here, you can still practice on that pushing and perhaps work around the edge of your resistance, and eventually you'll be able to join that lovely feeling of traction vertically. One more big breath in, spread your ribs. And as you exhale, come on back down. You can remove your spacers, Come on back into the center. See if you can keep that carriage as you walk into the center here. And then feet a little wider than hip distance. We're going to intentionally find a twist again. But this time, just notice where it starts. We're not going to use necessarily the shoulders to start it. Maybe you're used to twisting from the waist, maybe from the nose and the eyes. We are letting the hips and the knees go. So as your spine is loosened up here, bring the legs back and see if you can just find a rib cage twist. So the spine from just above the waist, there'll be a little bit of twisting in the waist, but that's not the part of the spine that's designed to twist. The twist is coming from the rib cage up, and there'll be a little bit of twisting action through the neck, but again, the neck is really not designed to twist. There's one pivot joint up at the top of your neck, which is where we do most of our turning from. A twist in the neck usually involves a side bend in the neck, and we don't want to go there. So notice that it's a severely reduced range of how far you can look behind you when we keep adjusting the rib cage. But that's what we're using when we're going into standing poses. So let's start out in our Parsva So here's Padasana. Parsva we're going to start with the right foot front. So that's 12 o'clock over on that end of your mat. And the left outside of the left foot is going to point toward 10 o'clock. Arms are reaching side to side. If you notice that you picked your arms up from your neck muscle, drop your arms, pull your shoulders down, and bring the arms up from there. And then find a twist just from that rib cage point. And you can turn and look over the right hand. So remember that sense of being a starfish. We've built the building from the foundation up, and then we're going to press energy out from around your navel, down each leg into the heel, up the spine, out the top of your head, and then from the navel, up the torso on each side, but out into the fingers on each hand. And then exhale, let your arms drop, and let's swivel the feet. Parsva Padasana on the other side. So Padasana has feet spread wide, Parsva is side. We've turned our feet to the side, this time to the left. 12 o'clock moved, short end of the mat, that's your left foot. Right foot, the outside of the right foot is pointing toward 2 o'clock on your imaginary clock. Remember, both thighs turn away from each other. Right. When we build this, so if I've jumped out, I tend to take my arms out. When we build this, we want to notice from the bottom up to the top, right? So that can be feet, thighs. We'll skip the hips, which are going to stay where they are because our legs rotating. Put the hips where we need them to be. And then we find the twist in the rib cage. And then shoulder blades pull down to bring the arms up. And you can turn your head over the left hand. So you may find that when you turn your head over the left hand, you undo your twist. Don't turn the head so far. So there's a lovely stretch that's possible all the way from this cheek down the neck and across into the back hand, your right hand in this case. So go through the building again from the bottom. As your weight on your heels and outside edges of the feet. Are both thighs rotating away from the midline of the body? How's the twist in the rib cage? How are the shoulders? Are the shoulder blades down your back while the arms reach? And next time you exhale, let the arms come down. Bring the feet forward, and we're back to being able to jump or step and train a landing. So even if you stepped, you train the landing, you could be jumping someday. Let me pause for a moment. So those of you who are in the chair and need a quick review, you turn to the side, you take one leg out, you take the other leg out so that the feet are pointing the same direction. You're sitting at the edge of the chair, and if you are able to turn so that the corner of the chair is front, you will be able to get more of the feet lined up together, but I know that's not possible for everyone. So we don't demand that the feet be lined up along the same plane parallel to the body. Otherwise, everything is the same. The next pose we're going into will make use of this, And it will also make use of that tilting off of one side of your body. So let me run through, for those of you in a chair, hand, we're going to use turning toward the right. Right hand is going to reach across to the left thigh. Lean over toward the right, so your left butt cheek is coming light on the chair at the very least. Reach the arm up and look in that direction. So those of us who are standing, we get in from Parsvapadasana. Traditionally, these standing poses come through Padasana, Parsvapadasana, and then we go into several different poses from there. So this time we're going to triangle, Trikonasana. So how are your feet? How are your thighs? How's your rib cage? How are your arms? So that same rocking that we did in the hips with our feet wide, we can do that here, right? Shift back and forth. The spine is just going along for the ride. So this is shoulders moving, right? Can you see that there's a curve going on down my body? If I'm going to keep my hips and shoulders in line with each other, everything is coming from the hips. So it's a side fold, and I'm shifting my weight more toward my back foot. Keep the twist, which will keep your core muscles engaged. If your core is not engaged, this is going to be dicey on your back over time. And then plant your right hand on your right thigh. It might feel like, oh, my knee is the perfect place to reach. Yeah, have a chat with your knee about that. Probably not quite as happy as you are. Keep the hand, however it reaches, on that thigh. Now you can use that hand to help remind you to turn the thigh outward. You can push down a little bit to find that twist. And then we have the arm reaching straight out. So Trikonasana, 3 angles. We have a triangle in the legs. Eventually, when this arm is straight, we have a triangle between the torso, the arm, and the front leg. But it's all straight lines. Again, this is not a side bend. When you see people going lower, they are not going lower by going into a side bend. They're going lower because their outside hip will stretch, because their front leg hamstring and front leg inner thigh will stretch, and because they have a very strong core to do this. So one last imagining before you come up. Can you imagine yourself as the filling in a sandwich? You're between 2 slices of bread. So you're not trying to poke out the top or the bottom crust with your bottom. And then on an inhalation, as if someone is pulling your left arm, come up towards your left leg. Bring your legs forward. So legs forward is feet facing forward, your legs are back in neutral. And then inhale your arms up so you're back in Padasana. Shift to Parsvapadasana. Feet, thighs, rib cage, arms. You can turn your head or not. And shift the hips. So this is that rocking. How easily do they rock on this side? A reminder that it's normal to have one side be different to the other. If there is a lot of clicking and thunking in your hip, your movement is too big for now. You can go bigger eventually someday, we hope. But stay in that zone where you don't have to go over speed bumps. If there is pain, this is absolutely not for you. Stay with Parsvapadasana. Then go with what's the maximum without side bending, right? So you want to find that place where you are well controlled here. Your core is engaged because of the twist. Front arm going to thigh to help remind you to roll the thigh outward, to help you to twist perhaps a little more towards your right hand, which is extending straight out of the shoulder. So when you get to the point where you are all the way over from the hip and you are not rushing this because your legs are not my legs, your arm may indeed be going toward the ceiling, but it stays in that alignment of going across the shoulder out to the fingers. And then again, we have that sense of being between 2 flat surfaces. So you're a yoga sandwich, you are between a double paned window. Whatever works for you as a flattening image. And again, an inhalation, come back towards your right leg, pull on your right arm, bring the feet forward, and then step or jump. And stop and notice again. How are you feeling? Where are you feeling? What are you feeling? What's going on with your breath? So let's go back out again, but this time let's go wide. Again, if you're in a chair, you want to be toward the front of the chair, legs extended as far as possible, and you're going to lean forward and you're going to rock from side to side, one knee bending and then the other. Standing, if you've been doing the series of classes that we're working through, we've done this already. You can put your hands on a chair or on the floor or on blocks. Pretend this is a chair. It's right in front of you. You don't have to pretend they're blocks. So you want to get your butt low and you just want to shift from side to side. So yes, your legs are working and your torso, again, is just going along for the ride here. It's not doing much. Feel your legs getting more and more powerful and perhaps a little more pliable. Notice what it's like on the outside of the ankles here too. It can be a nice stretch for the outer calf. And then come on back up on top of your legs, scoot them in to where you've got some control, and then you can either jump or step. We're going to go back down there, but we're going to add the shoulders so that swaying, twisting motion that we found while we're standing, we're going to find upside down. So again, same thing on your chair. You're just making sure that you're far enough forward. So here, even if you have your hands on a chair or on blocks, we're finding that low bottom, bend in the knee, and then as you go back and forth, your shoulder is going to roll in the same direction that you're going. And that shoulder roll will help your spine and torso turn into a nice ragdoll. Lovely release for the spine here. So those of you with knee stuff, you're not going as low with your bottom. Those of you who are not yet strong in the legs, having the torso up higher and putting some of your torso weight onto a chair or blocks can help. But you can still roll the shoulders, going slowly if you need to, until you develop the coordination to help release the spine. And then make your way back to the center. Find your way back on top of your legs. Bring them back in. And then take a last check-in standing. So one heel under each butt cheek or feet lined up under your hip joint, which is roughly where your hip bones end before your softer belly begins. Outside edges of the feet parallel. Most of your weight, heels and outer edges of the feet. Stack up the bones, arms, both of them, hanging off your back. When you stack up the head, you can think of ears over shoulders, cheekbones over collarbones. And then we are going to head down to the floor, or yes, there will be chair versions of these things as well. Okay. I'm going to disappear my mat. If you're in a chair, you're just sitting in neutral. On the floor, come to this kind of hook sitting. You want to be able to rock a little bit on your sits bones. So in the chair, it's the same thing, and you can use holding on to legs. So if we did this, allowing the ribs to go as well, it's a whole core work that you can use if you like, but I promise I'm going to give you something else to work your core. Notice if you're going ka-thunk over your sits bones. As long as there's no pain, that's okay. It may indicate that your hips don't work well together. It may just indicate tight areas in one hip versus the other, or if they're both thunking together, it's just tight connections. So remember, that sort of a tilting is what we need in order to be able to fold when we fold forward. I'm going to disappear again for a moment because my belt is invisible. So I'm just going to go find another one. You want a strap or a tie, or you can use a towel if you need to. Come to lying down. So some people call it hook lying. If you're sitting, again, you're just sitting. If you have a second object to put a leg up onto while you're sitting, that can be helpful. So starting again, this is constructive rest. And even here, you can do a little bit of hip tilting. So if you rock your tailbone toward the ground and then curl it up toward the ceiling. We want to get used to that feeling of tailbone heavier in this particular asana. So wrap the belt around your right foot. It's going to go right behind your toe joints. So I have a long enough belt that I can wrap it around my wrist so that my arms are not overworking. You're also going to lengthen by pulling, and that'll rock you more onto your tailbone, pulling your left leg until you can feel the back of the left thigh against the floor. Then lower your right leg even further until you can pull the toes back and completely straighten the knee. Without losing your left leg, use your arms only to pull the leg up. So if you're sitting in a chair, you're starting with the leg on a thing. Now, if you have something you can lie down on, it's even more effective. And then you'll be using arm strength, which is quite a great deal more than we use when we're lying on our back, because you're lifting your leg against gravity. The idea is to create a little bit of a stretch on the calf and on the back of the thigh. Now, if you have a hip replacement, this next step is not for you. Don't even think about it. You're going to take the leg just a little bit across the body toward the opposite hip. You may have to lower it because your knee may want to bend. We're getting to a slightly different aspect of the back of the thigh. We do not want that right hip to come up off the ground. We do not want that left knee to bend. You want to keep pulling until the back of thigh is on the floor. And then let it go. In constructive rest, notice if there's a difference between the two legs. And then let's switch belt up the left leg. Extend the right leg, feel yourself rock toward your tailbone. So some of you, even rocking towards your tailbone, may not be able to get that thigh down. Do what you can. There are a lot of reasons why that may be the case, but your body can change over time. And then again, we're going to go for as low as we need the leg, even lower than you think, because we get small bends in the knee and we no longer are extending the entire back line of the leg, which we want. We want from the waist, under your butt, behind your thigh, behind your calf, and then a little bit under the heel until it meets the sole of the foot. So again, we're pulling back to stretch the calf. And then you find that little place with your arms. So the weight of the leg, if I let go of the belt, which I'm not really willing to do, my leg just drops, right? You really want to feel that leg falling back into the belt. And if you find that things loosen up and you don't lose the right leg, yes, sure, let that thigh move. So when we were tilting the pelvis, the hips back and forth over the thigh, This is the other part of that movement. We leave the pelvis still and we find the movement of the thigh. And then we're gonna, again, hip replacement, this is not for you. If you have all the original body parts, you can cross that foot just a little. It doesn't need to be a big crossing. You don't want to use your maximum range here. Unless your maximum range is very, very small, in which case we want to increase it a little bit. Again, your left butt cheek is really solid on the floor. It's just the thigh bone moving in the hip socket here. And then come back to constructing rest. Notice if your breath is different here. We're lying down, but when we release the hips, we actually can have a big impact on the breath. And coming up to sitting, if you're in a chair, let your legs extend until your heels are on the floor. Or again, if you have something to put your legs up on, you want to find this sort of L shape. Some of you will find that there is no way to get an L shape. There's so much pull on the backs of the legs that you need to sit up on something as high as you need to go, including putting yourself on a chair if you need to. Because we're going to go into Paschimottanasana, which we did a few classes ago, reaching over a chair without that as a prop to assist us. We still want the fold only to come from the hip joint. So legs stay anchored, spine stays long, similar to what we did in triangle pose, where we just stayed long spine and we're just folding the hip. So as soon as you need to move the ribs without the hips also going, you have gone too far. If it is very challenging for you to be in anything approaching this position, stay with rocking. So we want the thighs and shins and heels to be anchored. Those of you who have joiny feet and can get your feet up off the floor, keep them glued to the floor. And you can use your hands to help with the rocking. Remind yourself that a really wide butt is what's needed when you forward fold. So we really are folding the way we crease a piece of paper. We want to find that front hip crease, let it get deeper, let the back of the fold get wider, and as much as possible, feel that pelvis, those hips, rocking over the thighs. And then come on up. Find a comfortable way to sit, just to play with your face for a moment. I'm going to come in a little closer here. We're going to do a little bit that's mostly connected with lymph and moving some of the trash, basically, out of the face. It gets stuck there as well as anywhere else. So very light with the fingertips, starting at the middle of the chin and dragging all the way back to the ears with the fingers. You're not dragging skin. You're dragging fingers gently over skin. And this is the channels that drain lymph to the outside of the face. And then we're going to do the same thing in the forehead from the center on out. This, by the way, is also a very soothing, relaxing movement, is across the forehead. Now, if you are limited in the use of your hands, just go one hand and then do the other side. And again, everything is being moved to the outside of the face. You can run your fingers down there and then down from the outside of the neck, just in front of the ears, and then down toward the center line of the collarbones, just a few swipes down. Again, we're staying very light and very superficial. We don't have to go deep to get this drainage assistance. We're going to go to a place that isn't necessarily about lymph drainage, but it is about helping to just soothe out an area of the face that gets very overused. Some of us develop those really lovely puppet lines from the nose to the mouth and then from the mouth down to the chin. So we're going from the corner of the mouth up toward the corner of the nose. Again, very lightly, we lift off and then we do it again. And just a few of these will help encourage a softening of overused muscles. And let go. If you need to change your sitting position, absolutely change it. We need to be really well aligned here in terms of ribs over hips, head over ribs, because we want to get in touch with our core here. So as you breathe out, just notice what happens. Where do you feel contracting towards center? Then we're going to add a little bit of resistance to this. So you can add the resistance by pursing your lips, or if you bring your tongue almost to the roof of your mouth, the way you do for sh or a hissing sound, you want to decrease the space that the breath has to escape through your mouth. Next exhalation, decrease that space with your lips or with your tongue, and then actively draw your corset around and in, draw your pelvic floor up until you have expelled all the air and then expelled a little bit more. Let it go to breathe in. So that shh sound can help. Continue to hear that sound all the way to the end of the breath. Let it go. We're going to do it one more time. So again, we're engaging the corset. Pelvic floor is part of that course. Your shoulders are not. And then let it go. Let's go back to constructive rest. You're going to try that once more in constructive rest. So if you're sitting on a chair, sit at the front edge and lean backwards a little bit. You can have your feet up on something or legs extended, feet down on the floor. So again, we're breathing out. You can use that sound or not. Once you've discovered that ability to use the core to expel all the air, you're in touch with the area of the body that you need. People on the chair, let me get you set first. Those of you on the floor, you can continue to engage that corset for breathing, or you can just feel what you feel in constructive rest. So I'm going to use the second chair because that actually makes it a little bit easier. So if you are in a chair, you are going from pulling your right knee in and twisting your left arm around. On an exhalation, lift your back up off the chair. On an inhalation, come back to center. See if you can leave the back lifted off the chair. If that's impossible, lean back again. On the next exhalation, the other leg comes in. See if you can bring that elbow across. Lift it back off the chair if you can. Come back to the center. So we're going back and forth very slowly. An exhalation, an inhalation through the center. An exhalation, and inhalation through the center. You're doing that 3 times total on each side. Those of you on the floor, there's a slight difference to this one because we're starting curled up. This is not the quick version of bicycle that you're used to. This is the yoga slow motion version. You only need a few to get the work done. So start by curling your knees in. On your first exhalation, curl your chest up. Use that lower corset, not pulling with your hands, not pulling with your chest. Your hands are just holding the weight of the head. On an exhalation, left elbow to right knee. Extend your left leg wherever you can control it. Come back to the center with an inhalation. So control means your waist feels like it's toward the floor. Exhale the second side. Come back to the center as you inhale. If you must come down, then go for it. Otherwise, stay lifted. Exhalation. Think of rounding. Inhalation, you're in the center. Exhalation, elbow to the outside of the bent knee. Come through the center. Once more each side if you can. If you're losing control, it's time to stop. Just go back to constructive rest. Can you feel how much work it is when we slow it down? So again, you're using that lower core last time. Move back to center. Yay, constructive rest, collapse, relax. So stay there and rest, those of you who are on the floor. We're going to do a couple more things, but I want to get people in the chair set up. So turning the chair sideways so you can see what we're doing, we want to find a bit of a back bend. Let me grab some blankets here too. So it's difficult in the chair to get the sort of support that we need. If you have some pillows or blankets available, they're going to go below your shoulder blades. And what we'd like to do, if you start by leaning back, now this chair, let me be smart and do this in the other chair. If your chair doesn't have a back, put yourself against a wall because you need something to be able to lean against or to be able to hold your pillows in place. So again, pillows are below the shoulder blades, and then you're going to lean backwards until you feel your shoulders rest. So we have a back bend going here, but it's gentle because you're sitting toward the front of the chair. Your chin is resting towards your chest. It will be tempting to let your head fall backwards. That's a trap you don't want to get into. So if you have no pillows, you're finding that arch. If it gets to be too much work to hold the arch, let it release, and then come back to it when you're ready. Those of us on the floor, we're using some props. Ideally, you have a couple of bolsters, and you line yourself up on the bolsters, and you're going to wind up lying as close to the tops of your shoulders as you can. So that feeling of being able to roll your shoulders back and lift the chest is going to be helpful here. I'm going to show you using these, and then I'll show you versions with block and blankets. This becomes a resting pose. So you want to start up on your thing, scoot yourself back until your shoulders reach the floor. Keep your knees bent. See if you can roll your shoulders like you're trying to get the top of the shoulder blade closer to the floor. Arms can relax on the floor down towards your feet. If this is all okay, extend one leg, extend the other leg. If you suddenly have a big arch in your back or your shoulders lifted off the floor, bend your knees again. You can play with extending one leg at a time or just keeping the knees bent. Breathe into your chest and let it open. You're learning to make a bridge from your shoulders to your feet. So those of you who have bolsters and are able to be here, there you are. If you have no bolsters, you are still okay. If you have books or blocks, you want one for your hips, one for your feet. It's not as supportive as what we just did, but we'll give you something. We want the feet up, same height as the hip. So that means that the hips will go on one block. You'll find that arch in the back, and then put your feet with the block close in. And then you can play with, can you extend? And you may reach a point where, oh, I can go this far, but no further. That's okay, stay there, and maybe you can try one leg at a time going further. In any case, we don't want the lower ribs to be poking way up. This is an arch up higher in the back of the bra strap area. You can also do this with blankets under the hips and blocks under the feet. Basically, we want the hips and the feet at the same height. Now, once you've done this a few times, if you discover, oh, I really love this, because it opens the front of the hips and the front of the torso, you can stay here for 2, 3, 5 minutes. If your lower back starts to hurt, you've been there too long. If you come out and you discover your lower back hurts, don't stay as long next time. It can be a little deceptive because it can feel really good, but there's a lot of subtle and important, very deep reorganizing that's going on there. So when you're ready to come out, bend your knees. If you have room behind you, push yourself off backwards until you're on the floor. If you don't have that room, one knee is bent, straighten the other leg and put it down onto the floor, then roll sideways. Let your hip roll, let your head follow, and then find constructive rest again and see how everything feels. So in order to open the front of the body, we do not have to close the back of the body. The back of the hips stay wide. The back is very long until we get to that almost hinge under the shoulder blades. If you're sitting, just sit up right in your chair, come back to neutral. And then one last thing, relaxation today is going to be with legs up. So if you have a wall, legs up the wall is ideal. I'll be going there in a moment. If you don't have a wall, but you have a stool or a chair, legs up on the chair is a lovely place to go. You want to have the chair in close to you so that your lower legs are supported, right? This is not about legs hanging out this way. You want to feel the weight of the thighs being able to drop down toward the hip joint. If I was going to use this chair, I would probably put a blanket or two on top of it so that I could get something a little closer to a right angle at my hips. If you are in a chair, you want to sit toward the edge of the chair. If you have a desk that you can put your feet up on so that it's higher than where you're sitting, even better. But if you can get your feet up, even on a footstool, really good. I'm going to head over to the wall. So easiest way to get up on the wall is to back up on your side until you can feel your bottom against the wall. And then you curl yourself around so that you can roll onto the wall with your legs up. Some of you may discover that, ooh, this was not an easy position to get to, and you want your butt further away from the wall. That's okay. You want your legs to be able to relax. If you found it difficult to sit in an L shape, it will be very challenging to be close to the wall, and this is not meant to be a challenging pose. This is meant to be a pose for relaxation. So you let the back of your hips feel nice and wide, your butt feels nice and wide. Your arms can relax, palms up if you're able to. If not, you can put your hands on your belly. Make sure your ribs and shoulders are arranged so that you're comfortable. Make sure your head is arranged so you're comfortable. We're letting the weight of the outer leg fall down toward the floor. Let your ankles relax and do what they're naturally inclined to do. So if you have circulation problems, if you have blood pressure problems, you're better with your feet up on a chair. You want to keep noticing what's happening here. If you are getting tingling, that numb feeling happening in your feet, move your knees. If that doesn't do it, it's time to come down or put your feet up on a chair. Also keep visual contact. Some of us don't get the tingling, we get blue toenails. And if that's happening, your circulation is not strong enough, and this can be improved by this position in very small doses. So I'm going to give you a third option for those of you who don't happen to have furniture around, but maybe you have some blankets. I'm going to use a bolster as the example. Legs aren't going up as much, but I'm putting the bolster right up under my bottom so it lifts my legs up a bit. It's better than nothing, right? If you're able to easily just balance your legs here without feeling like you're doing any work, you could also do this version. You could try just bringing these into chest, but all of these require some amount of work, and you want to be able to relax here for as long as you like. So again, start 1 to 2 minutes. You could go up to 5 minutes here. Do not push it. Again, it's not a small thing. If you feel, oh, it's no big deal, I'm just tingling through the feet, and it's a big deal. You want to address it. And at any point when you come out, remind yourself that you've done something really good for yourself today, and that's a great thing. Take care out there.